Yeah. Okay. Hey, what's up, guys? Kevin and I are back again to talk to you about a very interesting subject that is lesser talked about in this industry. Um, and I think that a lot of it has to do with just the fact that recovery in general and rehabilitation, like it kind of falls under the same umbrella of exercise and sports science, and a lot of it is very new in this, in exercise science. But today we want to talk about fatigue management. So like deloads, rest days, why we need them, and how to incorporate them, and just like the basics behind it.
All right. So I think where we can start this conversation is just going over some basic vocabulary, some basic terms to kind of define things so then we can explore these areas further. So when we're talking about fatigue, what is fatigue? And I mean, if we want to boil it down as simply as possible, fatigue is basically just the physiological state of your body dipping below what we can know as homeostasis, where our body likes to regulate and stay in equilibrium or balance. And fatigue is just when we dip below that baseline. So say you have a baseline here of this is where your body likes to be at, it's happy, it performs well. Well, when you're in a state of fatigue, you are dipping below that baseline and you are now in a state of under recovery where you're not able to perform as well as you could at that baseline status. So keeping things as simple as possible, that's just what fatigue is boiled down. You are not able to perform as well as you once were able to at equilibrium or homeostasis right here.
I think that's something that everybody can relate to. There's some days in the gym, you come in, you have a heavy single bench press or something. Some days you can lift more. Other days, weight feels incredibly heavy. And that's just a manifestation of where you are at in terms of fatigue. So I think that we've going along that, the reason why we want to manage fatigue is because of something called an SRA curve, which is basically the fitness model for how we get better and stronger and get these desirable physiological adaptations that we want from training. So basically, SRA stands for stimulus, recovery, and adaptation. The stimulus is what is going to be creating the fatigue. That's going to be your weight training, whatever you're doing in the gym. The recovery process is when you're going back to what Kevin described as that baseline, and you can basically go back and you can come in. You're not any better, but you're not any worse. You're basically just back to where you were. And then adaptation is when we actually get bigger and when we get stronger. So it's important to understand that principle when we're talking about this, because so in order for there to be that recovery and that adaptation, there must be a stimulus by that principle. So when we are training, we are trying to invoke that stimulus for our body to go, holy shit, we are dying. We need to get better. We need to get in case this happens again, sort of more better prepared for it. And how we do that is by managing our fatigue so that those recovery and those adaptations can take place. So that's why this is so important to understand. And a lot of people don't know exactly why this is important, and then how to just ways of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most basic one, without going into like deloads or like rest days or light sessions, is simply like relaxation, like throughout the day, like just sitting down, chilling, watching a movie or whatever, talking to somebody. That's a form of relaxation. Sleeping enough is incredibly important. That everybody kind of knows that you need sleep, but a lot of people will just neglect it. Kevin and I can both talk from personal experience, like with times in our schooling when we've had, just crazy schedules. Kevin and I have a very similar schedule, and sometimes sleep goes out the window because it just is like, okay, well, I'm paying, thousands of dollars for this class. Like, I mean, I'm going to have, 2 hours of sleep, I guess, by like, but you're like your recovery for the next session, your performance, your ability to overload is just a lot worse.
Mhm.
So I believe these are called passive recovery modalities, correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
so these are passive. And then one other thing that we can tie into passive is your nutrition. So this will obviously depend on where your goals are. If you're trying to be in a deficit and lose fat, or be in a surplus and gain muscle and strength, it obviously will depend. But so if you're in a deficit, there's only so much you can do. You're in the deficit, you're cutting option. We've had another talk about peri-workout nutrition and how to optimize that. So that is a way, even if you're in a deficit, to help manage your recovery around training. Go back and watch that after this one if you haven't watched that already. And then if you are in a surplus or maintenance, well, then you have the requisite calories and macronutrients um, to help support recovery. Because that's just going to play a passive role along with the sleep and the stress management to help you recover through your workouts. And I think it's very important. Like, you might be like, okay, this is great, but like, I just want to train. But like, you have to understand that muscle is not being built when you're in the gym. It's not when you're doing a bicep curl and you're bench pressing or squatting, you're not building the muscle in the gym. You're tearing it down. You're not actually building anything up yet. You have
It's really causing thousands of micro tears
Yeah, you
of
have
muscle.
applied the stimulus, but that's not enough. You now need to recover. So, in that recovery window, you can build that new muscle and then progressively overload on top of that the next training session, because you're now at a higher baseline level of muscle tissue. So, it's important that you realize that recovery is extremely beneficial in terms of building muscle and building strength
It's
and just
key. It is the key. Like if more volume was what was better and recovery wasn't important, Kevin and I would both be bicep curling on this, little podcast webcam thing. Like we would, because if more was better, I would be in the gym. Everybody would be in the gym all the time.
Mhm.
Like, but that's just
Yeah.
not how it happens.
Yeah, more is not better. Better is better.
Hmm.
And to do that, you need to make sure what you're doing is of quality and that you're able to recover from that quality volume. So, I guess now that we've outlined the passive strategies, we can now go into deep detail on the active strategies, which is what is the most important when it comes to recovery. Shameless plug, I did a recovery thing on my IG where I kind of had like a pyramid here of like what is most important on recovery. And we just touched on passive, which is kind of like the second most important tier. But the first most important tier, which is what the majority of this video is going to be on, is just active strategies. So these are your deloads, your rest days, your active rest phases, and things of that sort. So Adam,
My
if you want to,
sessions.
yeah, so if you want to go into, I guess we can just start with deloads, the thing everyone dreads, and just
Yeah.
go on
Okay.
that.
So yeah. So deloads are basically a period after you have accumulated enough volume, enough fatigue to a state where you are overreached. And overreaching, what that basically means is you are unable to, between microcycle to microcycle or from session to session, to recover adequately. You are worse off, which that sucks. Like you don't want that to happen. However, it's also important with maximizing progress in the gym if that is your goal. If you want to have, you have big strength or physique goals. There's plenty of empirical evidence for strength. There's less with muscle hypertrophy, but more and more studies are coming out that support it. And the science-based community, there's good reason to believe that, presenting that, over compensatory, I mean, presenting, too much of a volume or having like where you're overcompensating is effective and beneficial if you do want to maximize your gains. So deloads are a planned, mostly. We both recommend planned, and most of the science-based community will recommend planned. They are a planned reduction in volume and intensity, is to allow your body to not only recover but also have that adaptation take place, have a super compensatory effect to an extent that you will not be able to have always trained within like your maximum adaptive volumes and have not went to or exceed your maximum recoverable volumes. um, and so basically, people overcomplicate a lot of like how to deload. So first off, deload weeks should not be hard. Now, when you do start a deload week, those weights that you are using on the barbell that are reduced intensities, and you're doing them for less volume, less sets reps, they're probably going to feel heavy, but like that's okay. Like that's you're supposed to feel. You're overreached. So what I recommend for most people is a 70% reduction in total volume. And then for about every single set, have that be about, 4 reps in reserve or an RPE of 6. That's going to feel really, really, really easy. It's going to be a lighter low. You're going to feel like, I'm not doing much. Well, guess what? It's because you aren't doing much and you're not supposed to be doing much. And there's a rabbit hole with like deloads are not fun. Nobody likes to take deloads. Nobody who loves training wants to take time off from the gym. We both hate our deloads, hate them, because we wish we could just keep training all the time. Unfortunately, if you do not deload, you are setting yourself for an acute injury. There are damage to microstructures like your tendons, your connective tissues that you can't always feel, that you don't always know, are in a compromised position, because we generally tend to be a lot more in tune with our nervous systems and our muscular systems, and our connective tissue takes like a lot longer for like signs to manifest, or if it does, it's too late. So deloads have a few purposes. Going off of what I just said, they help restore your connective tissue integrity, which is super important, and they have a longer recovery time than like your muscular system would. Generally, I don't know exactly how long it is, Kevin. Do you know exactly how long it is compared to like? I know that the muscular system is like, it depends on the muscle being worked, but like in general, 24 to 72 hours. How much is
Yeah.
it for like tendons?
It's pretty similar. It's more on like the longer end, I would say, more like in that 48 to 72 range, if not maybe slightly more. But from my knowledge, I think it's similar, but it's more on the longer end. Your tendons are going to take longer to recover from, so we can just ballpark it at 48 to 72.
Yeah, so something that people might be wondering now, based on what you just said, is why not just take 3 rest days in a row and like not have a full week off of the gym? Kevin, do you want to go into that?
Yeah, so that's a valid question. And will you so if you took 3 days, let's say, of just complete rest before going into the gym and called that your deload, would that help you recover? Somewhat. The issue arises with recovery not just being our muscular system and our tendons. Like, there's also our nervous system recovery as well, which is arguably more important slightly. And that is going to take much longer. I wouldn't say much longer, but it's going to take longer than just 3 days of complete rest to be able to optimally perform. When you're going hard in the gym, your central nervous system, I'm sure most of you guys know what that is taking a hit every time. And if you just say, okay, now I'm going to take a 3-4 day break and then go back into the gym, well, you'll feel partly recovered, and maybe your first session back will be okay. But the following sessions after that, during that week, they're just going to go straight to crap, because your nervous system has not had enough time to fully recover back to that baseline. So you're it's like you having a scab that you just keep picking at and not letting it completely heal up. You're not giving it the time that it needs. Will that scab eventually heal? Sure, but you're just prolonging the time it's going to take. So just do yourself a favor and just take the full week, knowing that that's all you need, instead of just taking 3 or 4 days, but then running yourself into the ground quickly again and prolonging that what should only be 1 week into 2, possibly even 3 weeks. And no one wants that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with, you need, why we do stress the importance of scheduling these deloads and actually taking them, is because if you don't deload, like, your body is smarter than you are. Your body will deload for you. And it's going to take much longer, like Kevin said. Something that Dr. Mike Israel is an analogy that he uses as my absolute favorite. It's like having a car without knowing, like, and you don't have that gas tank fuel gauge on it, But like, you've been driving for like a long time along the highway, and there's like a gas station pulling up, but then like you also know there's like a long time period in between the next gas station that you can possibly fill up at. Now, could you like keep going past it and be like, okay, yeah, for like a little bit, but eventually you're going to run out of gas, and you're going to have to push your way to that next gas station. It's going to take much longer. So if we have these regular pit stops, quote unquote, where we can refuel and we can basically get our bodies back to a good spot where we can actually train and make progress over time, what happens is you make more progress in the same amount of time than you would otherwise had you done continuous training, because you aren't wasting that time. Your chances of getting hurt are way less. Longevity is key with this. Another beneficial part of deloads is glycogen repletion. Glycogen is a very, very important substrate in our bodies that's used for fuel in our muscles. So glycogen is stored in two places, in our liver and in our muscles. So when we are allowing, also having those days of rest, those our deload, we are allowing those substrates to completely restore, while also putting our chemical messenger balance in a better place for having anabolic chemical messengers like mTOR exceeding catabolic chemical messengers like AMPK. So that's another reason why deloads are super important. Now, so basically, I think that's deloads. You want to take 7 days, a full microcycle length, generally a week, of reduced loads at so like, let's say, or a very, instead of just doing like a whole 70% thing, cut whatever volume you normally do in half. So that means weight, that means reps, that means sets. That's what how the volume equation is. So let's say you got a 5x10 with 200 pounds on bench press. And so what you would do is you would basically do 5 times 10 times 200, divide that in half, and then distribute sets accordingly, and use the lighter intensities around RPE of 6. Do you have anything to add to that, Kevin?
No, I think that was good. And that's just, and again, this is just a very general prescription. There are other ways you can go about deloading, but we're just going to keep it very simple here. And this is going to apply to 99% of you guys.
And this is a better way I found for deload adherence too, for people that like to train, like to be in the gym. It also helps keep your routine, because sometimes if you take too many rest days or like a day off, which also I wanted to talk about why deloads are better than just taking a full week off. You I just lost my train of thought. Oh, that's awkward.
Okay. I can pick up on what you just said on like why taking a full week off is not as good. So I kind of changed my opinion on this a little bit, and Adam might disagree with me slightly, but like I used to be of the mind that taking a full week off is completely just not as good as doing an actual deload week. Now, do I still think going in the gym during a deload week is better? Yeah. Because you are keeping those neural adaptations present with your main lifts, especially your compounds. So when you come back to training the next week, the same motor patterns are working as efficiently as possible. And we're not saying you're going to forget how to squat if you take a week off and come back to the gym, but is it going to be as good of a squat as if you took a full week off? Probably not. You're probably going to lose some of that neural adaptation and come back and you'll be like, whoa, this kind of feels a little weird, like squatting again or deadlifting again. So it's beneficial from that standpoint. Now, if you are more of a lifestyle client or someone who is not competing, doesn't have super serious physique or strength goals, and this is kind of where I kind of align with like Jeff Nippard's view on things. You can, and in some cases, actually, it might even be better to take a full week off from the gym, because not only you still get that physiological reset back to baseline, but more importantly, you get that mental reset too. And this is not something I would do all the time, but maybe a few times a year. for your deload, maybe take a full week off from the gym. You can align that with like your vacation or something if you wanted to, just to give yourself that full like mental reset and psychological reset towards training, so that you're in a better place coming out of it, and that your love for training comes back and you can attack the gym hard again. But I definitely though would not advise taking a full week off all the time, like every 4 to 6 weeks. I would still do a normal deload, just maybe 2, maybe 3 times a year. Take one of those deloads. You can align it with a vacation or traveling or whatever, and just stay out of the gym. Still be active, still do active things, but just stay out of the gym to allow yourself that full mental reset. Will everyone need it? No, but I think for a lot of people, it definitely helps. And I know for myself as well, it can definitely help in times of training motivation being extremely low and such.
I'm not opposed to that at all. I 100% agree. I think it's important to have periods where, I mean, you got to think about it from like, especially from other athletic pursuits. People don't train all the time. They take time off, like, because if they didn't, they would literally die. Um, so like, I'm not opposed to that. I think that you shouldn't have that be the norm. But I think that, if you want to incorporate that, like Kevin said, a couple, 2 3 times a year, let's say you have a vacation, or like you're doing a big trip abroad in Europe and you're going to be gone for 4 weeks. That's your active rest phase, dude. Like that's fine. That's going to actually help you make more progress. Um, with on going back to deloads as well, something that people are going to probably ask is, okay, well, what about my nutrition? So my calorie expenditure is going to be a little bit lower. So Kevin and I have talked about this before, but the calorie expenditure of weightlifting is extremely low. You're going to have a very, and in your deload week, let's say you're going down from doing 5 sets of each exercise to like 2 or something. Um, Probably the caloric burn, like even EPOC, like exercise pulse oxygen kind of consumption, is going to be very small. I think let's say you're doing 5 sets of 10 reps, and you had bench press, overhead press, dumbbell flies, cable flies. I mean, the dumbbell flies, push downs, and skull crushers, and that was like your chest and tricep day. Going down to like 2 sets at like, this is probably even too high. It's like 50 calories maximum is what I would say is probably what you're missing out on. Um, so something that I personally do though, because I'm kind of a similar way, I kind of like, okay, I want to be like, have everything be like as consistent as I can possibly can, is I'll basically just add on like an extra 100 calories of cardio, or maybe do like a couple, and some a little bit extra like moving around during the day that I normally wouldn't do.
Mhm.
Also, just because I think keeping active is important for getting back into the swing of things. A lot of times, people just take a week off. Too often, it can get lazy, it can get hard to get back into the swing of things. But in terms of how much you're going to differ between session to just a session with like different changes in volume, we're talking about marginal calorie burns. That is mainly what your body will probably compensate for, just by normal physiological processes. Your body wants to stay the same. um and then I recommend for most people, the only time I really would change it, so like if you're cutting, if you're on maintenance, just eat the same amount of food. If you're bulking, there's no reason to be stuffing yourself with 200 300 calories above your maintenance when you aren't applying that stimulus for growth. So just reduce down to your estimated maintenance calories. If you want to add a little bit more walking, a little bit more cardio, that's fine.
Now,
Just make sure that you don't overdo it, because it can interfere with your recovery as well.
yeah. And if you're cutting, depending on when your deloads align, if you can align a deload, scheduled deload with a diet break, um, that can be extremely beneficial in your favor, because not only are you getting the recoverability from the deload, you're getting the extra recovery from bumping your calories up to maintenance for the diet break. Now, if you don't have it scheduled with a diet break, don't worry, just continue eating at your cutting calories. But if you're able to say, like, if you plan to have a diet break, say 8 weeks in to your diet or something, and that is also when your deload aligns with, that's perfect. And in many cases, I will recommend to bump it up to maintenance or at least a few hundred calories above what you're cutting at, just to help with extra recovery as well. Just because, even if you're deloading but you're still in a deficit, your body's not going to recover as much as it could. Now, this is just getting into really like small details. Is it going to really matter in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. But it is going to be something that's helpful. And then lastly, if we kind of shift a bit from deloads to now, we talked a little bit about rest days, and most take them and not train 7 days a week. But I will say that with rest days, so I think especially a lot of the people that follow you, and myself, they'll go and like ask like, how many rest days should I do? Should I do a push pull leg split and train 6 days a week? Should I do an upper lower and train 4 days a week and have 3 days of rest, or full body and have more rest days? Like, and most people will want to train like push pull legs 6 days a week because they love training. Sometimes skip that 6 day of rest, or if they're actually adherent, take that 6 day of rest. But one thing that I've learned is that you need to find out what works for you, because speaking anecdotally for myself and other people I've observed, sometimes that you might want to be in the gym 6 days a week doing push pull legs or whatever you're doing, but your body might actually do better with having more rest days in there versus training hard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and not giving your nervous system any break in between. And one easy way to change that would be, if you wanted to still stick with that split and you love training 6 days a week and whatever, you could easily just do push pull legs, insert a rest day, push pull legs, insert a rest day, just to give your nervous system that recovery time in between. Some people may do better with just an upper lower split or some sort of 4 or 5 day split, just to have the extra day or two of recovery. And when I mean extra day or two, I mean active recovery, not necessarily just sit on your ass on the couch and lay there recovery. That's important too, but you want more of those sessions to be active recovery if you're going to have more rest days. But just know that this is super generalized, and like, you need to find what your body works well on, whether that's taking one rest day a week, whether that's 2, whether that's 3, I don't know. You need to figure out what you feel best on and what you can perform best on, and how to split that volume out accordingly. And I think we've done another video on that. Like, I think it was our first one. So
Yeah. Like, just an example for myself, I found that with hypertrophy, I like 6 days a week. I can spread out my volume a little bit better, especially since I do train AM PM. My recovery is pretty solid with that, as long as my volume's in the correct place. But like, if I'm doing a strength music cycle and I'm coming up on one right now, I prefer upper lower approach, just because I can get more of that frequency on the main lifts. Whereas, I know that, like, if I was to do that with lower body, just because knowing myself, my lower body takes a longer time to recover. Makes sense, because my legs are very, very long in comparison to my torso. So the range of motion, everything, force production is just totally different for somebody like me. I need those 2 days of recovery completely in order to have an effective session. So yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. Rest days should fit in with the individual, with their lifestyle, and with their goals. And it's honestly, like, it's difficult to be honest with yourself and be like, maybe 5 days is better than 6 days for me, because especially if you really like training. But the reality is that if you really do respond better to 5 days a week and you do make better gains, isn't that rest day worth it?
yeah, like, just again, we speak on this purely anecdotally, just because we don't have much research in this area yet. It's like in its infancy. But like, I remember seeing like Alberto talk about how he was like, and for those of you guys who don't know who Alberto Nunez is, he's like one of the best natural bodybuilders in this fitness
Just
space.
look up Alberto Nunez, like, 1% body fat video on, like,
And
YouTube.
he made a story, and he was just talking about how, for, I think he said like 80 or 85% of his lifting career, he was like, he stayed tried and true to an upper lower split, regardless of the volume he had. For up until now, he's basically just done upper lower, or even a 3 day split, 3 to 4 day split for most of his career, just because that's what he functioned best on. Obviously now he doesn't do that all the time, except for strength blocks, because he's Alberto Nunez and he has like a shit ton of volume that he has to do all the
Yeah.
time. So you can't really fit that in 4 days. But for 80% of his lifting career, and for most of you guys, that'll be close to 100% of your lifting career, to be quite frank. You don't have to be in the gym that frequently if you don't want to be. If you want to be, we can make things work where we can insert rest days in between if you want to still train more frequently. And then one last thing before we move on, I see so many people also tied down to it needs to be upper lower. It needs to be push pull legs. It needs to be full body. But it's like, especially if you're in like a strength focused block, I personally, like, if you're in a strength focused block and you want to bring your squat, bench, and deadlift up, for example, you don't have to stick to an upper lower or a push pull legs. You can just take the movements you want to improve, your squat, bench, and deadlift, and plan those. Obviously, this is harder to do if you don't exactly know what you're doing with this yet, but you can plan those movements out and just say, okay, on Monday, I'm going to squat and bench. On Wednesday, I'm going to squat again, maybe do a supplemental deadlift. On Friday, I'm going to bench again, maybe do an overhead press, and then maybe some sort of supplemental squat, etc. You can tee your movements in as you wish. You don't have to stick to a specific rigid.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
you can have some flexibility with this. Even like there are so many different ways to make a 4, 5, or even 3-day split. It does not have to be the traditional upper lower or the push pull legs. There's so many different ways you can split it up. But
I write lots of custom programs, and a lot of kids are like, why am I training like my biceps on my leg day? Why am I why do I have biceps every day? Like, why do I have like why don't I just have like an arm day or something? And I'm like, because first off, assigning like labels like a split is irrelevant. It just matters what like and this is where understanding the physiology, the exercise science behind different muscle groups that as their individual SRA curves impact on your nervous system for your total body fatigue comes into play. Like for example, one of my leg days, which is I have deadlifts for this is my AM session, and you guys are going to lose your minds. This is revolutionary. I have deadlifts, right? I have good mornings. I have leg press. Then I have my calves and my forearms. Okay, that's AM. And PM, guess what I do? I do biceps and shoulders, and I throw in some traps. Oh my god! Wow, but that's not leg day. The reason why I do that is because it works. It just works. Like those are muscle groups that I want to bring up. They can be trained more frequently. So like again, like what Kevin is saying is it's very important. Don't become so dogmatic in one training approach. Be open. It's only going to help you. If you're dogmatic in like everything, you're probably going to be very, very limited, which is why it's important for your psychology to be in the right place with rest days, with deloads. Just because you're going to actually be able to make progress. And if there are a lot of people that are unwilling to take deloads or want to get around them, it's an issue with your psychology. I mean, maybe I don't really want to get bigger. Maybe I don't really want to get stronger. Maybe I just want to be tired and feel like I did something. If that's you, you need to be honest with yourself. Now, do you? And that's the case. Like we're going off of it. Do you need deloads? Does everybody need a deload? No. And the reason why is because in order to get a deload, you need to earn that deload. You need to train your body so hard that you are literally pushing it past what it can physiologically do. And a lot of people don't do that, because in order to reach that point, you need to be very, very consistent. You need to push through when training really, really freaking sucks. You need to, just really push your body. And a lot of people, when it comes to their physique goals and their strength, if anything's kind of uncomfortable, they just dip. They're like, bam, I'm gone. Or they're very, very inconsistent. So if you are going to take a deload, if you're going to take one of these more, longer phases of recovery, you need to make sure that you are actually earning it and you're having that a deload and not taking them too frequently. Or basically what I'm trying to just say is be honest with yourself. How hard am I working? Is my program hard enough? Am I really pushing in the gym? Like, am I actually training RPE 9 to 10 that last week? of training, really trying to get, better and have that super compensatory effect. If you don't feel totally fucked up at the end of your last week, you're probably not overreached.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't want to do deloads, that's fine. You can do the whole kino body approach of staying at your minimum effective volume and going to your lower end ranges of a maximum adaptive volume and never going up. But guess what? I guarantee you the gains ain't going to be as good, and it's going to take a lot longer
And
for you to get
I'll
jacked.
even say with that, because I think I followed the kino body program longer than Adam did. And like I
I
will
didn't
say,
follow the kino body program. I looked at it and I was like, "What the hell is this?"
yeah, okay. So I followed it during my, and we're not dissing Keenan about it, okay? Like we love Greg. We're not dissing him. But we're
Yeah,
just
actually,
saying,
like,
yeah, I actually like Greg. But like we're just saying with his approach, it got to the point for me, like I would, even because you're training, like with his approach, sure it's like minimum effective volume, but it's still very intense, like RPT, like RPE 8 to 9
9,
that he's
10,
training.
even
Yeah,
10.
yeah, even 10. So I got to the point where I was like, man, like my bench is not going up, my weighted chin-ups are not going up, my overhead press is not going up anymore. I'm like, my squats plateaued, and I was like, man. And then like I remember researching,
You
and I was like,
squats on a keto body program? Get
yeah,
out.
the superhero program had squats, so it was squats one day a week. But I remember getting to the point where I was like, man, like nothing is like budging anymore. And I was like researching, and I found info about deloads, and I was like, okay, let's try it. And I like deloaded, came back, and I was like, wow, I'm like progressing again. And then I was like, okay, yeah, exercise rotation instead of deloads is it
Yeah,
works short term, but it's not a good long term approach, and you need something that's sustainable. So
absolutely.
that's why we're preaching deloads. Okay, so we've gone through deloads, we've gone through rest days. I guess the last thing in active approaches would
Also,
be
just really fast. Rest days will do what deloads do, but to a much lesser extent. That's why you
yeah.
need deloads to actually have those full things happen. So yeah.
And I think there's two other things. One of them we've
Oh, sorry,
pretty much,
sorry, sorry. Sorry. So like the reason why why the rest days work for like a microcycle to microcycle is because your fatigue generated is sort of going to be a lot lower, but as you do progress lower, the fatigue that you have accumulated and builds up is more and more and more. By the end of the overreach meet, you're so fatigued you can't return to baseline. Like we mentioned before, you need that longer phase to actually go back to baseline and even super compensate, which is what we want. Anyways, apologies, Kevin. That was quite rude.
you're good. Well said. So last two things we have for active recovery are, one of them we've already kind of touched on in a whole video, basically, which was our volume video, but this is just volume management. We're not going to go into detail about that because we literally made a whole video about that.
Yeah, go
So
watch that.
real quick, man, you just need to pay attention to how much volume you're doing in the gym. And if you're under recovering, look at that. Make sure you're not doing more than you should be, and titrate that down if you are. And if you don't know what on earth we're talking about or how to even figure out if you're doing too much volume, after this video, go back and watch that video on Adam's channel, and you'll know everything you need to know about volume. Okay, that's done. Last thing with active recovery methods is active rest phases. I don't really personally use this that often. I don't think Adam does either, but it's something that can be beneficial. It's simply just a period of time, 2 to 4 weeks, where you are still in the, it's not a deload. You're still in the gym and you're still training relatively hard, like RPE 6 to 8, but it's more of a psychological tool really than physiologically, because you're still training decently hard, but you're throwing all your programming out the window essentially, and you're just training to train and have fun for like 2 to 4 weeks. And the whole goal is just reduce that mental fatigue from following a structured program and just have fun in the gym without losing muscle and strength, which is the important part. I don't usually prescribe these that often because in most cases it ends up with the client losing muscle and strength because they can't do it properly, to be quite frank, because you do have to have some discipline with it. So like I don't really advise it that often. For us, it's more so volume management, deloads, and rest days. I mean, Adam, you can touch on anything if you want with that.
I've done them personally in phases where I felt really burnt out. Generally, it's coming out of a cut, and I'm going into like maintenance or whatever, and I'll just be like, okay, I'm going to take like a couple weeks to do whatever I want. Um, and like it's a good psychological reset, and like you start to really crave that a structure of I know I'm going to fuck up this body part really bad on this day, and etc. But for in terms of psychological reset, like I would have some days where I feel like squatting. And I'm like, okay, I did like 4 sets of like 5. Okay, that feels good. Okay, I'm done now. Okay, now I want to do some hamstring curls, and I'm like randomly like, oh, I kind of want to do an incline bench. Like it's that type. It's like that sporadic, but like you're like, and I was like pushing myself hard, but it's just basically just like literally what like most of the teenage population does: come in and do whatever the heck they want to do.
Yeah. You're basically just training like the good old bro again and just throwing all your knowledge out the window and just having fun for a
Arm
while.
day every day, bro.
So that's everything with active. So again, active means things like volume management, deloads, rest days, and active rest phases. That's kind of the 4 main things with active strategies. We've already gone over passive, which is our sleep, stress management, our nutrition.
You want to go over signs of deloads really fast of needing one?
Yeah, we can do that real quick. So I'll touch on it briefly, and then you can expand on it. So like signs of deloads, you'll know most people, you'll get to the point where you'll know when you need a deload eventually, because you'll get to the point where you'll start experiencing some symptoms like just not wanting to be in the gym like ever, poor muscular recovery, as well as just structural recovery with your joints and tendons and ligaments. Like you'll just things will just start to ache and hurt, and you might experience some discomfort and
Doing
pain.
this will
Yeah,
hurt.
yeah. You'll start to experience some discomfort and pain in certain ranges of motions, and especially with the heavy compounds, then that's when you really will be able to, if you're feeling things like pain or discomfort, or any just like joint or tendon discomfort or pain, deload. Like don't even add, if you have to, this is something Steve Hall always talks about, and I love this. It's like, if you have to ask yourself, should I deload? You should probably deload. Like it's that simple.
Nobody ever
Like,
regrets taking a deload, but people
yeah,
who need a deload who do not take them always, always, always regret it.
yeah. Because one rep, one set, one day in the gym won't make you. It won't build your physique tremendously, but one day, one rep, one set, it can break you, legit. Like,
Mhm.
and when I say break you, I mean that one rep or set can be, if you're overreached, can be the difference between you recovering if you didn't do that, or you, I'm not going to say snapping your shit up because I hate that term, but you essentially just getting in some sort of acute pain, and then,
Chronic acute injury.
yeah, and now you're sidelined with an injury from the gym
And you
for,
have to take even longer than the deload week. So
yeah.
jokes on you, haha.
And it's not just deloading now. Now you got to go through a rehab process, which if you know what you're doing,
Expensive.
yeah, which if you know what you're doing, you can manage it on your own, but most don't, which is why I'm in school for this.
Yep,
So,
we both are.
so, so you need to make sure that you, if you have to ask yourself if you need to take a deload, please, please, please just take a deload. Don't, we see this all the time in Adam's group that he runs, but don't get into this situation where then you end up having to ask someone, hey, my low back flared up. What do? You don't
Yeah,
want to be in this scenario. So just take your
you don't
deload.
want to be asking that question. It's embarrassing for
Yeah.
everybody.
All right. So that's with that. And then lastly,
Poor
so
sleep will also happen as a signs of
yeah,
deloads. You'll be a little bit more
which is what you're
irritable.
experiencing right
Yep,
now.
I can't sleep for shit. And then your hunger will be really weird, like not normal. Like some days I like it's really weird right now. Some days I'll be like super super hungry. Other days I'll be like I have no appetite.
Mm-hmm.
That's not normal. So yeah, but
And
besides that, that's basically all the signs. If you feel
yeah,
like
so
shit, you probably need to like deload.
yeah, you should do that. So we've gone through active, we've gone through passive. If we're kind of structuring this in like a pyramid, we've gone through the first and second tier. Now the last tier, the thing most people in this community seem to focus on, but probably shouldn't focus on. these are the random passive modalities that don't really do anything. Like, I'm just gonna
Icing.
I'm just gonna name a bunch of them, but icing, cryotherapy, ice baths, saunas, Theragun, myofascial release, Graston, IASTM, foam rolling, massage. Go down the list. I'm not saying none of these things don't do anything, but I'm saying if you are focusing here and you have not done the requisite work here, you are doing yourself a major, major disservice. A random Theragun or foam rolling session is not going to do jack shit compared to focusing on tier 1 here with active and tier 2 with passive. If you just focus on these two tiers, you have, I would say, 98% of all your recovery needs taken care of. The last 2%, maybe you can get a benefit from some of these
It's
things.
mainly going to be a psychological placebo effect where like you're like, oh man, this feels really good. It feels nice.
I will go, yeah, and I will go into specifics with a couple of these things just because they do actually have science backing in.
Doesn't Graston have some?
No, because we just had a systematic review that says that it's not beneficial compared to
When was that published?
Like 2 months ago or something.
2 months ago. Okay.
There was like a systematic review that's like.
I know that there was some evidence pointing to it being effective, but that's good to know.
Yeah, it's not like, again, it's mostly from a psychological perspective, patient expectations or client expectations. Like, you think you're gonna feel good when you get it, so you do feel good. But the issue I have is not just with that, but when you're relying on these modalities, you can end up possibly noceboing yourself if you don't get these on a certain day. So let's say that you're used to getting this cryotherapy or maybe Graston session after your workouts or after a couple of your workouts, and you have the belief that it works for you, but then there comes a week in your training where maybe the shop is closed, maybe the clinic's closed, or maybe you're out of town and you can't get that Graston or massage session or whatever. Now you have the belief that this is what you need to recover, and you're no longer receiving that anymore because you're out of your normal element and routine. So now you end up noceboing yourself, meaning a negative form of a placebo, where you are now going to end up in a worse state because you are not having that treatment that you think is going to help you recover. So you don't want to be reliant on things like that. A lot of people say, oh, it's placebo, so it'll help and it's fine. Yes, but you end up developing an expectation and on receiving it and on it helping you. So when that gets taken away from you, you now end up regressing because you have the belief that you need it to be recovered. So if you just understand this and know all these things here, they're not needed. They're just maybe slightly helpful ancillary things that may help with your passive recovery. You don't have to be chained to having to use them, and you don't end up noceboing yourself when you're not able to foam roll, or you're not able to get a massage, or you're not able to do Graston. And then real quick, there are a couple of these things that do help, but there is some nuance to it. The biggest one probably being like, I get a lot of questions, and I'm sure you do too, Adam, on like ice baths and things like that. Like, are they helpful? Yes, but in certain situations. So
mainly just for chronic pain,
yeah,
or like the acute pain.
But even then, so we have evidence showing that like icing after a session, a workout session or a
The
performance session,
inflammatory response, which is important for that
yeah,
like adaptation.
you're not going to get as good hypertrophy or performance gains if you ice.
Likewise with anti-inflammatory drugs, such as ibuprofen or Tylenol.
Yeah, all NSAIDs and things of that
Yeah.
nature. That's all going to do the same thing. So, but there is situations. Most of you probably won't fall into this, but some of you might. There are situations where an ice bath can be beneficial. So, say you have multiple. Let's say you're an athlete and you have multiple games this week. You have like 2 or 3 games this week, like you're a soccer player or something, and then you're on top of your normal weight training sessions and things like that. The ice bath can help you in recovering much quicker between those games and those sessions, which is where you would want to use them, because now the goal here is just to perform. The goal here is not to derive an
Which
adaptation.
is why with my world and with your world, with a lot of people that are not as like wanting to get jacked bodybuilder or like a power lifter, we will use them quite a bit. At least in my training rooms, they are like athletes come in all the time just to get iced,
Mm-hmm.
just to get something, or like being like the contrast bass or something.
Because you're not trying to, like, when you have multiple games scheduled and things of like that, you're not trying to get an adaptation from the games. You're just trying to recover so you can perform and win that match, and then recover really quickly so you can go into the next match. Another example, for some of you who are aware, is like with CrossFit, things like the CrossFit Games, where the athletes are doing like 3 or 4 events in a day, and they are very intense events. So you finish one event, it's very common to see them jump into an ice bath. So then 3 to 4 hours later, they can perform in their next event, because you're you're an athlete now in a performance situation. You're not trying to develop an adaptation. That's already been done the past like 8 months or whatever. Now it's time to perform. So you need to make sure you're in the best state possible, which is where that comes in. We also have evidence with saunas. It's very in its infancy, but we do have evidence with saunas and heat shock proteins that it can possibly have a beneficial effect with muscle hypertrophy and performance. I am not comfortable 100% recommending them as a must do at all, because, again, the research is in its infancy, but it does seem interesting and there's no downside to it. So, I mean, if you train at a gym like Lifetime or something, and you have like a sauna there and you have time and you want to jump in for like 15 to 25 minutes or something, it's not going to hurt you. It might benefit you. So go ahead and do it. Um, Other than that, there's not really much evidence for anything else working. So if you bring up anything else like Graston, ISTM, massage, foam rolling may help with DOMs, but that's very acute also.
Yeah.
Nothing else really works. So
Yeah. So basically, focus on what matters and less on what doesn't. Again, with a lot of these recovery rehabilitation modalities, like a lot of it is just theory.
yeah,
And we're having more and more studies come out. So as this does evolve, we will know more better how to treat patients. But for right now, for like most of therapy, what I've seen has been a lot of what we've talked about, with those rest days and
yeah, we don't like, especially in like the whole, for any of you who are in pain or discomfort right now, especially in the rehab world with therapy and stuff, it's like we don't have any evidence that Graston is beneficial. We don't have any evidence that dry needling is beneficial. We don't have any evidence that massage or manual therapy is beneficial. We don't have any evidence that cryotherapy is beneficial, or recovery boots, or acupuncture, or anything you basically want to say. Like, there is like, this is why, like, it, like, in therapy and in the clinic, it's like we focus a lot on the same things that you do as a strength athlete or a bodybuilder, where it's on managing your load management.
strengthening
Yeah. It's
those.
on load, it's on strengthening graded exposure, it's on load management, which is that first tier that we talked about with our active strategies, and then it's on the passive strategies of sleep and nutrition to help support that. And anything
Yeah.
else, none of that really matters, and none of that
Yeah,
honestly.
like for example, one of my football players this past semester, he had a surgery in his on his patellar tendon, and his MCL, his medial collateral ligament, and so we were getting back solely into weight bearing, into whatever, and so at our facility, actually for the football team, we have a underwater treadmill, and we have like these cameras set up that where they can look at how they're running compared to the a non-injured knee. And so, but like what that does, being underwater, again, load management, we're gradually increasing the resistance, the intensity. So like some days he goes slower, some days he goes faster or whatever. And then, we do exercises to strengthen the knee joint, such as, the hamstrings and whatever. But like, again, it's a lot of this other stuff. And then like, we don't really focus too much on the other But everybody in the fitness community seems to think that it's like the really cool thing when there's really not much
Yeah,
to
I guess it's cool to take a little like Theragun looking thing and like blast your muscles with it,
and
but
like
like,
if it feels good, but like you're not really doing anything.
yeah, like I've tried it before. It feels wonderful, but it's not really doing anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, do it if you want, but don't act like it's really helping you because it's not. Okay, I think we've covered most of everything with recovery. So if there's
Yeah,
anything,
honestly, I think that's about as simple as we can make.
yeah. So thank you for watching.
Deloads, also going back to deloads, how often should you deload?
Hmm.
Um, it's a good question. For generally, if you've been training for longer, you're more advanced, you're stronger. You need to deload more frequently. Generally around every 4 weeks. If you are more of a beginner, or if you are a female, you could push your mesocycles every 5 to 6 weeks. We generally don't recommend going above 6 weeks. You'll eventually run into issues,
Agreed.
and just it's just best for long-term progress. So do it. But
Yep.
yeah, I think that's basically everything I want to say. And, Kevin wanted to say. So I think that we'll just wrap it up right here. Just say thank you guys for listening. We really do appreciate you people who do, care enough about what two nerdy college kids have to say. Um, but yeah, we'll have more content coming next. Drop some comments below, like what more stuff you want to hear from Kevin and I. Hopefully, try and get like one of these out like a month.
Yeah.
Um, I'll put Kevin's Instagram down in the description. Mine. We both do offer coaching, um, programming, meal plans, etc. So hit us up if you are interested. Kevin's extremely qualified. Um, so definitely, if you guys are wanting, a good high quality coach, Kevin is a good option as well as myself. But yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys for taking the time out of your day, and
Thank you.
we'll see you guys in the next one.